Hey everyone, welcome to our show.
We did not plan that.
We did not at all. Just wanted to say hello and welcome to our new format. We're experimenting with something new. So welcome for the journey. We are the honest couple. Hi, honey.
Hi. I just had the sudden realization that I have to control my face.
No, the audience doesn't want you to
control
your
so
face.
A couple things. If you're new here, my name's Cassie Zambrana. This is my husband.
Hi.
Marco. Hi. We're the honest couple, or at least we try to be.
Most of the time.
I don't usually sound like this. I've had
the laryngitis.
Next to no voice for 3 weeks now. So we're going to do our best to push through this, but my voice is probably going to crack at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what are we talking about today, babe?
We're going to talk about politics. So let's do a disclaimer right off at the top. I'm going to actually look at the closed camera. So hello, everyone. This is a disclaimer. We are going to go ahead and make sure everyone knows. First off, we're not trying to offend anyone. We're saying our views. We're not speaking for the general world at large. And more importantly, that we're not going to say everything correctly necessarily. We're not going to backtrack. We're not going to try and overcorrect for everyone. We're not trying to not hurt people's feelings. We're not trying to hurt people's feelings. We're just trying to be as honest to where we are at in this moment. And we're always open to growing, changing, and evolving as people.
Listen, politics is a charged topic. It's a hot button topic. It's something that we often, in our discussions with each other, get heated about. So we, Marco says all of that to know that, we're not here trying to offend people. We might offend people. We offend each other sometimes too. It's okay. We're all going to make it.
Yeah. And even if we offend family, you have our phone number, so call us. We can hash that out.
Don't leave hateful comments.
Yes.
Just kidding. We don't even have enough of a social media following for that. If you leave
hateful comments, they will most likely be deleted, not a censorship, but just because I don't want her feelings to be hurt. So.
Oh, my feelings.
No, I'm the sensitive wolf. Let's be real.
I was going to say, because I'm more of a sensy pants than you.
Okay, so on that cheery note, and welcome to our show, we're going to start off with our differing views and approaches to politics.
So I think, one of the things we were talking about as we're figuring out how to structure this episode was that it may be important to kind of talk about where we come from, who we were influenced by as kids, and, what we heard in the media as kids, what networks we were listening to, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We obviously were probably not actively engaged in that as children, but I think,
it definitely influenced us.
Exactly. Sure. Everything you hear from, whether it's opinions of parents or teachers or the TV's on, whatever, all of that influences you. So
no, that's very fair. Yeah. I mean, growing up, I grew up in a household that was no stranger to Fox News, and they can't see your tongue because you're hiding it behind your microphone. There you go. Ultimately, yes, I grew up more on the conservative side, and I think that does reflect some of my personal commentary on what I vote with and think about. But ultimately, I wouldn't say my parents kind of went through an ebb and a flow of watching news. I would say it was more during a national tragedy or during election season and stuff that would be more prevalent. It wasn't a constant 24/7 for us. How about you?
Yeah, my dad watched the news a lot. I don't remember my mom particularly engaging with it too much. But my dad.
Wait. What was your network of choice at home?
I'm gonna get to it.
Oh, okay, sorry. What was that one again? Okay. We have a soundboard, and we're just gonna experiment with how that plays.
It's gonna be overkill. I'm sorry.
Hear it, so I don't know how she's judging me.
Anyway, my dad was the one who watched the most news, and I remember it being either like MSNBC or CNN. Okay. So that's what we're talking about here.
Total polar opposites.
I hear Fox News and I could vomit.
You have a visceral reaction.
That's how much, quite frankly, the media today too, and I feel like I can say this because I went to school for journalism. It's gross, no matter what the network is.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely heard a lot more of that, more of the liberal viewpoint than anything else.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, just very lightly, my background with my parents. My dad is an immigrant who came here as a teenager, coming from a communist country. And so one of the biggest things that cultured me was his statement of, you know, whatever you hear, trust but verify. I think it's actually a quote from one of our presidents, Reagan, if I'm not mistaken. And it might be, so check me there. But ultimately, it was more, just do your due diligence. Just if you're going to say something or believe in something, just try your best to make sure you actually get informed on the topic.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things we've agreed on in this conversation and just our marriage, is that we're always open to hearing each other's opinions, always open to hearing each other's side. And that ultimately, if you have something that you strongly believe in, you're going to ask me to reconsider where I stand. And I'm okay with reconsidering, not because I'm trying to please you, but because I'm trying to grow as a human being.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I mean, I think for me, when it comes to politics, I am very emotionally charged. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very fair.
We have kind of different approaches to politics, in which, like, Marco is far more analytical. He looks a lot more at the policy, how money is spent, all of those types of things.
Yeah, the things that politics, and I'm not trying to say should be driven on this only.
Okay, I knew you were going to say
finish that. But it's more what most people should actually be voting for, you know, the things that actually are going to benefit our country, you know. And again, there are the social issues, which that's where you really get honed in on, is more in the human issue. Maybe I'll put it better that way.
I appreciate you saying that, because that's what I was going to say. For me, yes, there's a tendency for me to care more about the social issues, but for me, it's more about people. It's the human aspect of it. And so it's not that I don't care about, you know, policy and all of that. And ultimately the social issues do become policies and all of that. But I care more about the human.
Yeah, you care more about what's going to affect people.
Yeah, or what's going to have the biggest effect on people.
Yeah, and then that ultimately plays into us and our family, and I think that's kind of where these topics that we'll be discussing really centers around, is like, how does this impact us?
Listen, I don't think either one of us necessarily like to commit ourselves to a specific, you know, party affiliation. I think that
nope.
You know, you register one way to vote,
yeah,
right? And I think we're actually both registered the same way.
How do you think we're registered?
We're both registered
as
Republicans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
I'm pretty sure that when I registered to vote initially, my mom was like, "You better put Republican," and I was just like, "Whatever." And then I think since then I just I don't know. Maybe I changed it. I don't remember. But I think both of us tend to, you know, typically when you are one affiliation over the other, you know, regardless of who the candidates are, you tend to kind of continue to lean that direction. But
it's easier when you have villains.
We care less about the party affiliation and more with the platform.
So disclaimer, don't judge us.
I mean, to say it again, yes, don't judge us. We're kind of all over the place when it comes to political stuff. And quite frankly, we're still learning how to have these conversations ourselves.
We're not well. Sometimes.
I mean, let's just be frank. We're sitting down yesterday to talk about the structure, and we're trying to decide, you know, what specific issues would we like to talk about. We couldn't even agree on that. It was like, it was a disaster, like, to put it simply.
I mean, just even agreeing on that, I think that just highlights how polarizing our politics can be. So I appreciate what we were able to discuss and sit down. And so I think that's a great way for us just to, what is the purpose of this episode for us to talk about? And so I think just with this new format, we want to talk about things that matter to us, but we also want to talk about stuff that's meaningful and more in depth, again, in the context of us and how we see our family and how we want it to revolve around our family. Mm-hmm. So this is an opportunity for us to share about what we're thinking currently, and that's a present tense thinking currently.
And I really think that this is more a conversation piece right now because it's an election year.
Yeah, I definitely think so, because we can jump forward a little bit about those particular individuals, but I don't like our options.
Let's come back to that one.
Okay.
That's a dark, scary place.
It's a very dark, scary place.
I guess, first of all, why even talk about politics, right? I feel like it's this scary subject that people don't talk about around the dinner table because it incites fighting or whatever. But I'm like, hey, the former president's doing it. Why not? I had to. That'll give you a little indication of my political leanings, I guess. I actually just came up with that right now, in the moment, in real time.
I think that was the rim shot.
That was the rim shot.
Okay, moving on.
So anyway, I think it's a subject that people try to steer clear from. But I have had a lot of conversations, and I will say, I actually tried to steer clear of this conversation with Marco and his family in particular for
many years.
The first 2.5 years of us being together, because I do have differing views on many things. And for me, it was like, I can't engage in this. It's going to get ugly, whatever.
Well, because I think initially, again, we're not trying to veer too much, but from the social interaction aspect, it's because your views were, again, more on the social side versus the analytical side. And my dad and my mom are more on that side as well of the analytical with me. And so just the conversations that could be had, I think you were worried that they may judge you for it, or more importantly, that you were worried maybe that your political views might jar them.
I think it was a little bit of everything, but I think it was more so that when I talk about these things, I get very passionate, and sometimes it comes off as angry. And so I was more like, I don't need to go there. But what I have learned in the last year and more recently is that I can have open conversations with them. Yeah. We can see it differently. We can say that. And guess what? We all still love each other at the end.
Yeah. That's the benefits of family.
So because of that, it's why talk about it? One, it's important. It literally is impacting everybody. The decisions made in an election have an impact on literally everyone in some way, shape, or form, right? But for us, it's why talk about it in our marriage. Well, when we were dating, we knew that we saw some things differently, but we talked a lot about the core issues, things that might impact or come up when you have a family.
Yeah, the things that we needed to agree on for us to maybe move forward in a marriage.
It really was deciding, are any of these big enough things that we're so on opposite ends of the spectrum that this is going to cause an issue in our marriage? And the short answer was no. But now that we have a son, there is this question of, okay, how do we engage with certain topics? Or we need to talk about it because we need to make sure, even if they're not differing views, that we know what our plans are when it comes to his education, how to talk to him about certain things, whatever it is.
Yeah. And certain topics that we, from birth, have having to been decided, which we'll get to that topic about vaccines and things of that nature.
Yeah, and it's if we don't talk about it with each other, we don't talk about it with the family members who are a regular day-to-day part of our life, we might find ourselves in a situation where a topic comes up and people don't know how to approach it with our child. So when we have conversations about it, we can say to those people, hey, this topic, we'd like, if it comes up, please redirect that to us, or give them tips on how we would want them to engage in that topic should our child initiate it or whatever. And we can't do those things if we don't have conversations about them.
Yeah, no, ultimately it's incumbent upon us as parents because, and I hope you agree with this, again, we're talking about most of these issues already, but we're also having this conversation live with, as we record this, is I want to set an expectation, not of these are the issues that people in our family can't talk about with our child, but just here's how I would like you to approach these topics. Not to, he's a baby right now. He's not even 2. It's more about just helping guide him to become a young adult ultimately that can be a free thinker, but also have good wheels on his, tricycle before he gets out there. He's not even, he's barely pushing a go-kart at this point.
Listen, we're overthinking this way too much at this current stage of life. Yeah. But we just recognize that honestly, the decisions made today in the presidential election, all of that do have an impact on, he's only 3 years away from going to kindergarten.
Which will be in this next president's time frame. Yeah.
It's important for us to talk about it. It's important for us to know where each other stands. And it's important for us to talk to our families about it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So one of the big things that Cassie and I had to agree on initially, and this will transition into how we've not always been productive, but this was right after some of the big things that were happening, George Floyd, other things. You and I were having a very heated conversation in the car, and it wasn't that we were disagreeing, but sometimes we would say something in a way that I would say something in a way that you couldn't hear. And so we just had to work on our communication. This is something we've been saying from the beginning with our marriage and our relationship, but communication's not been our strongest suit. We've been working on it. We're continuing to work on it. But part of the ground rules in that has been we need to have respectful conversations, both about politics, faith, family. But really, when it comes to politics, we were watching the presidential debate with Trump and Biden, and that set us off. Like, this was before we decided to talk about this, but that just, we were at opposing sides because I was being dismissive or whatever about the
I honestly, I mean, I think we've come, I don't want to say a long way because it's not that long, but 4 years ago when we started dating, it was an election year. It was an election year. Yeah. And it was Trump and Biden. And, there was a lot of emotion and a lot of things happening around that election. And, leading up to that election of, well, how are you going to vote and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'll be transparent about the fact that I chose not to vote in the last election. And I know that that's something that a lot of people get really upset about. They think, it's your civic duty, whatever. I have the utmost respect for that. For me, it didn't feel right. I couldn't do it. But we had a lot of conversations about that and just events going on, George Floyd being one of them, but just so many things, mass school shootings and just all the violence and,
and the fear around
rigged
COVID
elections and COVID and vaccines and all of this stuff.
It's very polarizing.
Very polarizing at the very beginning of our relationship. And there were a lot of things that, no, we didn't see eye to eye on. And it was really hard for us to have conversations about them. Because
it's hard to have healthy conversations about them because we could have it, but every time we fought.
Well, and it's like Marco and I, like he said, we've constantly been working on our communication so that we can have more productive conversations. That was a tough one for us, was politics, because I go from 0 to 60 like that. And Marco's a lot more patient, but he uses words that are triggering to me, or I make a snappy statement that he feels like I'm shutting him down. It was all of these things.
I mean, and just for full transparency, we've had a tough day today. Today was a tough day.
Yeah, we had a little bit of that going on today. So it's just, I wasn't particularly thrilled about recording this episode today of all days, but here we are. We're doing our best. But anyway, we had those on early on in our relationship, had those conversations. And over the course of time have had to learn, okay, we got to set some ground rules here. And like he said, that debate was 3 weeks ago? And we were still we're just gnarly people. So by no means are we giving you like a guide to how to have conversations with your loved one about politics. Heck no.
I Google searched how to have conversations with your significant other, and every website, majority of websites
said
don't be respectful, listen, all the things we're talking about, but none of them had actual questions to ask your partner.
Yeah. Because
what do you start with? Do you start with A, B, C, D, E? Pick a topic. It's going to be, gun control, it's going to have differing opinions. Vaccines going to have differing opinions. Name any of the alphabet soup out there, it's going to have differing opinions. And it's going to be offensive to someone if you don't treat it gingerly and walk through it with respect and kindness.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple weeks ago when we had that disagreement while watching the debate, I think I literally said, I don't ever want to talk politics with you again.
And here we are. Hi, everyone. Talking about politics.
Which then springboarded a whole other conversation about how, honey, that's not very realistic, you know? Mm-hmm. But I just was like, I'm done having these conversations with you. I don't like you.
Well, it's because I think that was coming off of a longer, tough time frame that we've been having with the move and everything else that we've acknowledged that there's just been not tension, but just lacking. I'll be transparent. I wasn't putting as forth as much effort in the house and things that caused a lot of stress on you.
Honestly, we just had a lot going on. We weren't spending a lot of time together.
Yeah. So now that's being worked on.
We are working on establishing some kind of ground rules for a very civil discourse. And part of that is just shutting up for 2 seconds. I think both of us have a problem of like really, truly actively listening. It's like, especially when it comes to politics, we're just like waiting for the other person to close their mouth so we can be like, you know?
Well, it's hard because I have so many preconceived notions. And so coming into this and actually discussing with you things without making it a personal attack. Because I feel like sometimes, I'm not trying to make a current statement, I'm saying there's conversation moments where I'm trying to say something and it's a trigger word, trigger topic, whatever it may be, and I vehemently disagree with you, but I'm not taking the time to listen or dialogue with you about it in a way that's actually meaningful, and you feel like I'm coming at you.
Well, because generally when Marco disagrees with me, he won't say, I disagree with you. He like turns it into a teaching moment, and nothing irritates me more than a teaching moment.
Oh, I'm working on it. Okay.
So, I mean, to keep it simple, we've basically had to say, okay, we need to work on our active listening.
Yeah.
So try to repeat back what you heard, or at least give some indication or acknowledgement that you heard what the person said. Something I struggle with is making broad statements about you always, or when it comes to politics, I have a tendency like to just make it more personal. It's like, well, how could you, as a person who loves people, and Marco's like, I do love people. Like, oh my gosh, you know?
Yeah, it's not about that. And then,
not making it a character issue. And just trying to be respectful, keep the volume down. And ultimately, I think for me in particular, it's taking a break if I just can't keep my cool.
This is an area we both don't do well in because we're so in the heat of the moment. We'll kind of get to the boiling point before we walk away. And so I'll say for me, it's just something I'm working on, is having that healthy conversation to where when it becomes, and this is perfect from today, you said, I'm not able to have this conversation in a more meaningful way right now. And I did not listen and I kept pushing, and that didn't go well.
Especially with your spouse, because that's the most important human relationship you have, is set some ground rules so that you guys can have healthy, productive, respectful conversations about these things.
And that applies to everything in life, but for politics in particular. But we're talking about one of the big things that where we run afoul when we are talking about politics is 3 areas, and they just happen to be 3 P's, so they're fun. This is what they are. It's party, person, and policy. So the areas that you and I talk about constantly.
Well, first off, what are the definition?
Okay.
Yeah, let's lay just some definitions down of what do we mean when we say party, person, policy.
So party is talking about the Republican Party, Democrat Party, Independent Party, whatever. Just the generalities of those particular parties. Mm-hmm. Then you have the person, the current, again, this is a candidate for those parties.
Let's not get into the specific candidates just yet.
Not yet. Then you have...
I'm working my heart rate down for those.
The policies of which those candidates stand for.
Their platforms.
Which
is another P.
Hey, it's the fourth P. Got that one. All right. So go ahead, honey. Tell me a little bit about...
So we define those to say, these generally tend to be different approaches people have to their voting. So a lot of people vote with their party no matter what. So I'm a Republican, I'm going to vote Republican no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have people who vote solely based on the person, the candidate, regardless of their platform, what they stand for in terms of policy, regardless of what their party affiliation is. Yeah. Who is this person? What is the character of this person? And then you have policy/platform. What are they going to do during their presidency? What do they stand for in terms of policy and lawmaking and all of that? So those are the three kind of pillars. Another P.
Oh my gosh, we're up to 5 Ps.
Anyway.
You're not funny. We're going to overuse that button. But ultimately, I think one of the key things is what is our personal approach? My personal approach, and this is why we butt heads so much.
Can I caveat this by saying you probably don't care, right?
No one cares.
Well, I mean, nobody cares how we vote, but you're here, so we're going to tell you anyway.
Again, we have to acknowledge that people might be listening to this in audio. We're making a lot of faces, so please come watch us if you're listening.
Oh, that's true. If you're listening to us on audio, that was so last month. We're not doing just that anymore.
No, we're onto video and audio, but mostly video. So come over and watch us.
And if you don't want to watch us, please continue listening to us.
We'll promise to make it more interesting in an auditory fashion. Which, speaking of what is my personal approach? This is why we disagree a lot. Mm-hmm. Is going back to the analytical and the I don't want to use emotional.
You can say it. I'm emotional.
Is I vote or typically care more about the specific policies. Yeah. And that's because those are, about the economy. That's about, maybe a certain, I don't know, other state-driven legislation, things of that nature. That's like, oh, this will have more long-term ramifications, and that should matter more to me. That's what naturally I gravitate towards, which is conversely.
I'm definitely... I need to preface this by saying it's not that how we choose to vote means that the other things don't matter, but it's just the primary way in which the
way we decide them for ourselves. Yeah.
So for me, it's not that the policy doesn't matter, but for me, I care a lot more about your character as a human being, because I think that who you are as a person informs how you treat other people and how you will lead a country. And so that's where we differ. Neither one of us could give two craps about what their party affiliation is. It just so happens that typically the policy is more in line with the party that,
sure,
generally speaking. But yeah, we have different approaches. So when you have people like, I guess now we can talk about these people.
Yes.
When you have people like
Joe Biden.
He's not in it anymore.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Old news. Kamala Harris.
And Donald Trump. When you have people like that, it becomes really difficult. I'm
going to love punching in on you in the edit.
Punch. Vogue.
Okay. But why is it difficult for you in particular, honey, when it comes to these people?
I might piss a lot of people off, but, well, first off, I guess let me backtrack by saying that our options suck.
Yes.
So
110%.
In case there was any question about that, it just is what it is. We're doomed.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I probably will also not vote in this election.
With our current candidates.
Okay. Because I think one is a brainless idiot. And then the other one I think is a brainless idiot and a criminal. So I'll let you figure out who's who. But, so I probably won't vote, but
on exclusively the presidential, because I think an important thing you and I have talked about, and we did during the last election, although I did vote for the president at that time.
Yes, I voted for everything else.
Is we voted for all of our local and also the higher levels of
Listen, I know voting's important. We did take time to
look at every candidate.
To look at the candidates,
local,
read the
regionals.
Yeah, read what we were voting for and make decisions. We didn't agree on all of those, but we were pretty aligned.
Most of
but
them,
when it came to that specific seat, I couldn't do it. And I feel like I'm again in that spot. And I know, again, that people have their feelings about that. I think it's okay. I think that the way that our system is set up anyway, I just don't think it matters that much. I know that's...
Well, there's a movie called Swing Vote, and every vote matters, but I do tend to agree
I
with
think
you.
that the electoral votes and all that are a little dragged up. But anyway, so my personal view is that I think it's okay that I don't vote. I also think it's okay if you're mad at me for that. I can live with it.
Again, this is our opinions,
but
not yours.
Anyway, so we have a different approach to that, which tends to, Marco can ignore the fact that he's probably going to vote for a criminal, and because he likes his policy.
I have not decided, truthfully, and I will acknowledge this before everybody. The election season for me has just begun. I have not done all my vast research. The thing with, and I will say his name, he who shall not be named, Trump. The thing with him coming into his first 4 years, he was a businessman of ill repute, but at least he was untested as president. Now he has a 4-year track record because he hadn't held any, from what my knowledge, any other of office of any kind. So now I have that to compare against Kamala if it is indeed them two exclusively. Always can write someone else's name in, and there's always a third party. So I will be doing my due diligence. I will be watching debates, but debates are only interesting if they talk about topics, which the last one, they talked about feelings, and they talked about calling people liars versus
They didn't even answer any questions.
So for me, it's going to not focus on...
I'm the best president this world has ever had. And then Biden's over here.
Liar. You lie. So it really is... That man, I'm glad he stepped down.
I actually feel bad for him.
Spend time with family. Get some help.
I think this is a good point for me to say this because, to be clear, I think Donald Trump is a grotesque human being. Do I think that everything he did as a president is bad? No, I don't. So I think that's where our different approaches to how we vote comes into play, because it's not that I disagree with him.
No, but you just don't like him as a human
being. That maybe he might make a decent president in terms of policy. Yeah. I struggle with who he is as a person, which makes it hard for me to want him in the most powerful position in the country.
Of the land. Sure. Which, whether you agree or agree not, again, we're not trying to pick sides here, but whether you agree or agree not that January 6th was a travesty and ultimately was an insurrection, was a hoax, was let out, whatever the case might be. It was an unseemly sight. Avoidance. It was an unseemly sight on our nation's capital that should never have happened.
Hal did it.
Period. That part we can debate going back and forth.
I said Hal did it.
Oh, Hal did it?
The morning show.
Oh my gosh. Okay, watch the morning show. Great plug.
If not, spoiler. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
My bad.
Ruined my train of thought. No, but I've actually started reading the January 6th document that Congress published, and it's kind of heady and needlessly long, in my opinion. So I'm working on it. Anyways, we're talking about specific issues. So...
Yes. We wanted to talk about some of the more specific issues that we're having conversations about right now as parents, as we way too early think about what our son's schooling is going to look like.
Yes.
And all of that.
Yeah.
So
both of us coming from California, we both were raised and had parents who gave us, made sure we got our vaccines as kiddos and different things. And so then this topic of anti-vaxxer or vaxxer, it wasn't
I hate those terms.
Do you hate how everything is polarizing?
I hate those terms.
Have a right.
Everything's so divisive.
Everything is
so divisive. There's no middle ground.
No, but ultimately, my issue with this topic really is, I was looking at the list of vaccines that I had as a kid, and then looking at what they are now, and it's such a long list that parents are given, and so what we were coming off of was COVID and this lockdown and mandated, and you must do this. And so I'll acknowledge it. I didn't get the vaccine for COVID. I'm alive and well. Did others get it and that was best for them? Yes. Did some of our family members get it and was it not great for their health? Yes.
Listen, I think at the end of the day, it's a personal choice.
Yeah, I agree with
to
that.
get it, or it should be. I guess ultimately it was. You're not exiled if you didn't get it, but
No, but go ahead. Sorry.
There's definitely a lot of judgment around those who chose not to get it. I also didn't get it. And guess what? I have an autoimmune disease. I'm still kicking.
I do want to interject though, because you said not everyone had a choice. I do have, I'm aware of, if specifically with colleges.
Yeah, that's a good point.
A friend of mine was still going to school at the same time, and he was given the choice: take the vaccine and you come and attend school in person, or you have to attend online. Yeah. So it's not being removed from campus, like you cannot attend school, but you're given an alternative course to participate in colleges. The whole point is for you to network, get connected with people, have that interaction. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying they were not given an option or forced to do it, but they have to look at what freedoms, and especially I'm thinking specifically California, what level of government oversight was interjected by those on high to the people.
Yeah, I think the reality is that that specific vaccine came from a place of fear, mm-hmm. and that fear was shoved down everyone's throat. And I took major issue with it. We took major issue with it.
Yeah.
And so, we had conversations when we got pregnant about what that would mean for, like Marco said, we both had vaccines as a kid. And listen, I have a lot of health issues now that I now believe to be the result of vaccine injury. And that's something that we learned more about during that period of COVID when, vaccine injury has been happening for a really long time. It's something that's,
not really publicized.
It's not talked about,
yeah.
But it's happening. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. And I hate the term anti-vaxxer, because my thing is we don't have an issue with all vaccines.
No.
Okay. Our son has had multiple.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of, do we need a vaccine for everything? No, particularly one that literally just somebody threw out there 1 second to another, being the COVID vaccine. No, I'm sorry. My kid's not getting it. I'm not getting it. And so we knew when we were pregnant and when Sully was born that there were going to be decisions we were making in that moment that were going to potentially impact his future, mm-hmm. in terms of
education.
Where can he go to school? How much pushback are we going to get? We're really grateful that we found a pediatrician that is so nice and mm-hmm. does not shove it down our throats, but that's not the experience everybody has. We're labeled as an alternate vaccine schedule.
Because we don't do everything.
We pick and choose what we want and when we do it and how we do it, and the way in which it's administered. And that's our right as parents. But it's something we talk about now, mm-hmm. Where's he going to go to school? Thankfully, we live in a state where
there is exceptions.
There are exceptions, religious exemptions, whatever it mm-hmm. is. So we have options, but we knew when we made those choices that there would be long-term ramifications.
And I think we have to stop and acknowledge that no parent, all vaccines have, one in whatever may have side effects and so forth and so on. But, we don't have all the answers. We're not medical professionals making these decisions for our children. We can do the best that we can research. We can do the best that we can prepare and think through and consider. At the end of the day, are we making a decision out of fear or out of the best information we have at the moment.
And actually being educated on that.
And the main issue, and I'm not trying to shame anyone who has gotten vaccines for their children. Some, people who have fully vaccinated their children on everything from doctor recommendations to have not done any. And both children are doing well. And, great. That's wonderful. That's the ideal. But I think the concern that I have, and you used a word, I'm not sure if you're wanting to use that one, but there's a lot of just fear tactics because fear mongering. Yeah. And just my issue that I had going into the doctor's office for the first time was solely because we didn't know this guy yet, was when we read the documents that they sent home from the hospital was, here's all these things.
Here's your schedule.
Massive list. Here's, first vaccines in the first 5 years of his life or whatnot. And I was looking up on the CDC website. I said, okay, why are certain vaccines being combined? Why, this used to be a single thing. Why is it multiple? The reason is for the convenience of the parent.
That is literally what it says on the CDC website. That's not our summation of it.
At the time that we read it.
In 2022, prior to November of 2022, that is literally what the CDC
The convenience of the parent to save costs.
It was not just about costs, but it's because kids don't like shots. So let's just administer it in one.
Yeah. And so I don't want my child to have to. But
for us, it was that, but also next to... on the CDC website, again, next to each vaccine, it tells you what the result may be should you not do it.
Oh my gosh.
Literally the majority of them say death, right? So then I go into my own web browser and start researching each of these vaccines. And as I'm reading, I'm not clicking on just one link, right? I'm trying to cross-reference, verify, whatever. The reality is that the majority of these things, should a child get them, can be treated with antibiotics, will resolve on their own, are not death. And so I have a huge issue with this because this is just an example of where people in positions of power are using fear and not fully giving parents the educational tools and resources they need to make informed decisions. And so, again, going back to something Marco said, we're not saying vaccines are bad. Really what this was about for us is that every parent needs to make that decision and every doctor needs to respect it.
Yeah, and not shame the parent for making a choice that will either bless their child or, again, you're making a decision in the moment that you really don't know. Ultimately, everyone's biology is so different.
Exactly.
There's no way to.
It's a toss up. It's literally throwing a ball up in the air and seeing who, what happens.
Yeah.
And, I think for me, my biggest issue was I had someone in my family who took their child to the pediatrician after they were born and were told, I'm not going to be your child's doctor because you won't get vaccines. And to me, that's absolutely ridiculous. And so we mentioned this particular issue because thankfully this is one that we
are in agreement on.
Yeah. But it's a really important one. And I would say vaccines is not like, maybe post-COVID, it's more of a conversation. This is not a huge issue when it comes to voting for the president and all of that. But post-COVID, I think it has become a larger issue because COVID kind of set a new precedent for
governmental control and
that and just the world of vaccines in general. And so I think that knowing what each person's stance is on that, is helpful. But if nothing else, just we need to talk about it. It's something we talked about and thankfully we're in agreement on.
Yeah. No, I think it really does matter about coming down to voting because, again, both sides, that's not really a topic for them that they're focusing on. However, it really goes back to how did both of these administrations, because COVID really, under both of these particular leaders of left and the right, oversaw, were a party to
different stages of the COVID crisis.
Of the COVID crisis,
Yeah.
and neither one handled it really well, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I remember recording a video and I sent it to a friend for encouragement. They were asking for people to record some stuff, and I remember in this recording sharing that like it's important not to give up hope, because every day when we turned on the news, and yes, we'll go back to the news, Fox for me, probably CNN for what other site for you, but it was the numbers that, the number of reported cases, numbers of death. It was nothing but straight
fear.
Yeah, fear and destruction and death. And today could be your last one with your loved ones. Yeah. Like, how dare you go outside and breathe clean air, or, gather. Like, that concept, people are so quick to move on from. And so for me, that's I can talk about that one for a very long time, just because I think there needs to be multiple documentaries and multiple people like stopping and actually asking what happened, because there's a lot of wrongdoing financially, as well as people overstepping power, in my opinion. But
yeah, I think the other topic that sadly has come up
a lot recently, actually,
in the last few years, quite a bit, has been the topic of gun violence and gun control, and
how this matters to us, because as young parents, we have a child that we're going to send to school. We have siblings. My sister recently is a graduate a couple years ago, so she was in college during some big shootings a couple years back. Cassie has younger siblings who are still in school, and that's very near and dear.
Yeah, listen, I have members of my family who are really big on guns, and for me, it's never been all that important. I didn't grow up in like an environment where it was something that I needed. I didn't hunt. I didn't do any of that. Have I shot a gun? Yes, I have shot a gun, or many guns in a range. But it's not something that's very important to me. But I think, when I see shootings at schools or movie theaters or malls or wherever it is, and I see that lives are taken because of the access that people have to weapons that they shouldn't have any access to. I don't think there's anything that gets me as angry as that.
Yeah.
And, for me, it's not even just a fear now that I have about sending my kid to school. There was a period of time where I was scared to take him to the freaking grocery store.
Yeah. That was in 20.
That was literally last year. There were shootings happening. There was it was just bam, bam, bam. And they weren't local, but it was just like, man, this is crazy.
There was a rage of gun violence across the nation.
I mean, there was a time Marco and I were in a movie theater, and
oh my gosh. Yeah. It was watching, I have to remember the movie because it ties into why it was so scary. It was Quiet Place Part 2. Yeah. And it was at the climax of the movie, less than 10 minutes from finale.
And just everything went out.
Power went out.
And the anxiety that I felt in that moment of like, what the heck is happening?
Yeah.
And, I know I've had conversations with my mom in the last couple of years where she told me, she's like, there's days that I dropped off my little brother at school, and he goes to this big high school here in Texas. And she was just like, I wonder if I'll pick him up today. Like, that kind of crap is crazy. And listen, violence is going to happen. That's a part of our world. Mm-hmm. There's evil that exists in the world. If people truly want to cause harm, they're gonna do it, right? But I'm really sick of hearing that argument of like, well, if it's not a gun, it's going to be this. It's like, that doesn't mean that we have to put automatic weapons that are designed for mass shooting in the hands of people just at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, I think you and I talked about this, and it's interesting, again, that we agree on this topic, considering that where some other topics that we discuss we're not in agreement on. Because it's not that, and I'll speak from my political view on this, it's not that because I'm a firm believer we should all have the ability to bear arms. I think it's important for every American to have that right. It's outlined in the Constitution, but not just because it's outlined. It's the ability to protect the homeland. It's the ability to protect your family. But what does that mean? It means it is upon you to be trained, to be a person of upstanding character, to go through certification and retraining constantly, making sure that whatever firearm, if it is in your home, is secure, is safe for your children. It makes sure that you're not just having it. And again, people who are gun enthusiasts want to go shooting competitions, get it, go have fun, knock yourself out. But for the average citizen, why would you need a weapon in the household? It is to be a tool to protect your home and your family, not for you to go be prepared to go on in the mall. And I mean, again, things happen, and I don't want to deny, oh, they'll conceal carry, oh, this, that, and the other. I don't care. At the end of the day, if a person wants a weapon, you should not be afraid to have to wait more than 21 days. You should be more than a certain age.
Yeah,
and go through multiple background checks. And the government, and I know the background checks are existing, but they're lax. They need to be stronger, more stringent, not to deny people, but just to make sure you're a good person.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I'm not against gun ownership either. Yeah. I believe in everybody's right to bear arms, like you said. For me, it's not that. You can keep your guns. I don't give a damn. I just, like Marco said, I think that, first off, I just think that there are a set of weapons that just don't need to be made available to any just Joe Schmo off the street. Sure. I think that there are military grade weapons and they need to stay that way. And it's not to say that one of those people won't use them for harm either. But I think that, to your point, if you want it that bad, you should be willing to wait a little bit longer for it, for more checks to happen, for more people to have, to sign off on it or whatever. Yeah. And to me, having that extra layer of protection doesn't cut into your right to bear arms. It's your right to own guns doesn't mean it's your right to go into a supermarket and ask for one and walk out with it the same day.
I think what gets conflated is the right of ownership versus the right to bear. And when you look at when it was written, and this is me being a nerd. When you look at when it was written, it was basically saying that you as the homestead, you as the individual coming off of colonial rule, had the right to essentially raise a militia, the ability to protect yourself and stand up against those that would oppress you and your nation, your neighborhood. It wasn't just about, yes, I would like to have this weapon because it's shiny. It goes click, click. Like, I think that's where we're at, is people feel like you're oppressing my ability to own something, but I want it. It's not about that.
I also, though, don't think that your right to own a gun is more important than people's right to live in a world where they feel safe.
100%.
Like, sorry. And if it came down to it, then I'm like, take them away.
But see, that's where we disagree, because it's the topic.
And that's fine. That's fine. That's one area where we disagree. But again, that's like my worst case scenario. Sure. I'm saying there's so many steps before that. And for me, I think, the reason why it comes up for us is I don't think that parents should have to drop their kids off at school every day
and worry
and have that worry. There are a million other things that can happen to that kid throughout the day. Yeah. Maybe not that severe. That shouldn't have to be one of them. You shouldn't have to worry about going into the freaking grocery market to get some milk and bread and wonder if your life is going to be taken. And just because it's not like the chances of that are super low, it shouldn't exist to begin with. Like, and I know that, like, it'll be a different weapon. It's a knife. It's a whatever. It's just a regular handgun, whatever it is. I'm saying you need to do what's best for the most people. It's not about one person. It's about the mass, the majority.
Yeah. And we talked about this last night when we were discussing this, and I'm not trying to dive into the comparison between the two, but it's a fine balance between wanting enough government oversight and not wanting enough where I want to do it myself. And I think that's also another polarizing aspect in every topic, whether it is this or other topics that we don't want to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, these were not the couple of topics we were going to talk about. But as we started talking about the ones we were going to put on here,
yeah,
I straight up was just like, I can't talk to you about these things on camera because
it just wouldn't be productive.
It's not productive. I'm, going back to the communication piece. We're still actively working on that piece ourselves. And I'm fully fine saying I'm not there yet. There are certain topics that I cannot engage with him about because we just don't see eye to eye on it. And they're too emotionally charged for me.
Which I would want to engage analytically, but it's an emotionally charged conversation. And so it just
he asked me these like questions that I'm like, I don't have the answer to that because I don't care about the answer to
but
that.
See that, and that's where we then spin the wheel. So.
No. Over.
Okay.
So anyway, we didn't bring up those two topics.
That was your first anyway.
Oh my gosh, go me. This whole video thing is just really...
No, it's having a script. Let's be real.
So we don't bring up those topics to try to sway you to feel any certain way.
No.
We just wanted, in encouraging people to talk about politics, we wanted to share about some of the conversations that we've been having about politics and that we continue to have.
Yeah.
In hopes that, I again, going back to what I said at the beginning, I know that these can be potentially heated conversations and people shy away from them. I don't think you should. As long as you can be respectful or just know where your boundary is and when you need to
disengage,
take an exit. Like, I think these are conversations that we need to have with family members, friends, and again, particularly with our loved ones, especially when there's kids involved.
Yeah. And again, if family watching this, if you heard anything, if anything offended you, the goal wasn't for you to hear our words and then internalize it that we're coming after you. Please talk to us. Ultimately, these are our feelings that we are processing in real time, that we're developing, communicating on. So, I'm always open to hearing her talk about Trump versus toe polish or something, and that toe polish should win. And I may have a strong analytical disagreement with that, but at least I'm open to hearing about it.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a little level of humor that I like to bring to, like Marco knows, I'm always going to make
Oh, that's why I said toe polish.
Yeah, a quippy little statement about, Trump and his horrible tan or, whatever. Like, that's just, it brings a level of
levity.
To the situation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that was our conversation on politics, but let's not leave you hanging there. What is next for us? Because not every topic is going to be as politically charged and, red or blue colored themed.
And quite frankly, I don't think this one was too bad in terms of our discussion.
We missed out on the opportunity. LED lights. We could have one that was blue, one that was red. We missed out.
Darn, I'll create a cool thumbnail.
YouTube, hey.
So again, like this wasn't super heated between us. We did that last night, so we could have a more productive conversation today.
That's funny.
But we obviously took a step back from doing weekly podcasts. It was a little bit much, but in doing so, we wanted to have longer episodes where we talked about things that really matter to us without trying to like fit it in.
Yeah.
So we've kind of scoped out the next 6 months of episodes. Mm-hmm. We have some really exciting things that we're looking forward to talking about. We're going to bring on some really fun guests, people that are really special to us in our lives, different family members, friends, things like that to talk about, kind of spice it up a bit.
I look forward to these topics and I love diving into this. We've been recording here just shy about an hour, and I think having a longer form for us to talk and just kind of share. And again, most of these will continue to be more fun and lighthearted, but we wanted to talk about topics that we can't really just do in a short format. So thank you for being with us and joining. Again, we have a fun little jingle that we might be playing here at the end of this episode.
I was going to sing it, but
no.
I don't have a voice. So yeah, we're going to do that cringy part now where we say, follow us on our social media. hit subscribe, do all those things. No, but
and
really,
if you want to hear more of her stripped voice, we can get that on social media.
No, but really, like, we don't really care about social media numbers, to be honest with you.
Nope.
But if you like us, you think we're funny, you think we're embarrassing, you think we're cringy, whatever it is, share with your friends and have more people make fun of us.
Yeah, because ultimately this is meant to be an honest conversation.
Yeah, so on that note,
good afternoon.
Good evening.
And
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thanks so much for joining. We hope you like our vibe. We're the Honest Couple. We'll see you here next time. We'll be here every month, so like and hit subscribe.